This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy, we go deep and lightly surface the big ideas. What if we told you there's an invisible language woven into, well, pretty much everything around you? Your clothes, social media, even how your city is laid out. And what if that language suddenly became really visible, really crucial during big global crises, forcing us all to sort of reinterpret our world together? Welcome to the deep dive. We take your sources, give you the context, and help you get truly well-informed fast. Today, we're diving deep into something called semiotics in the life world. Now, that might sound a bit academic, but trust me, it's not. It's actually a really powerful way to understand how we navigate and make sense of our everyday lives. Our sources today, they come straight from the 15th World Congress of Semiotics. And this gathering was actually conceived during some pretty major global disruptions. Think the COVID pandemic, other geopolitical shifts. And what the experts there noticed was really striking. They saw societies performing what they called enormous semiotic labor, basically a huge amount of meaning-making work, just trying to adapt.
Exactly. That's the core idea. This theme, semiotics in the life world, it really highlights that semiotics isn't just about looking at signs that already exist. It's more of a critical investigation, into the active processes of making signs and making meaning. That's what forms the very heart of what some call world making.
World making. Can you unpack that a little?
Yeah, world making is essentially how we collectively build our reality, how we understand what the world is through all the signs and meanings we share and create. So understanding the nuances of how we make and read these signs, it's absolutely essential, not just to know what's happening, but crucially, why it matters to us, how it shapes our shared experience. So our mission today, really, is to show you just how broad, how surprising, and how relevant this whole field is, revealing those hidden codes.
That's a powerful way to think about it, actively constructing reality through meaning. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's unpack this with some maybe surprising examples from the sources, because like you said, we often just go through our day without realizing how much meanings is packed into ordinary stuff.
We really do. The sources show that even something as basic as our material culture, the objects, the spaces, the things we do every day, it's this incredibly rich semiotic landscape. It's constantly communicating, often below our conscious radar.
Okay, let's start with fashion. That feels very personal, right? Like it's just about taste. But the sources say it's way more complex, almost a form of life. How does semiotics help us see that? How does clothing become so tied up with the lifestyles and values?
That's precisely it. This new semiotics of fashion doesn't just see clothes as, covering or decoration. It sees fashion as a dynamic system of signs. It's a form of life because it actively does cultural work. Take the example from the Kaptatur township mentioned in the sources. Fashion there isn't just about what people wear day to day. A specific style or piece of clothing becomes a kind of celebration of unity and diversity.
A celebration? How so?
Well, it's a conscious semiotic act. It visually signals and reinforces shared values, like Ubuntu, that deep sense of shared humanity and community. Especially after difficult histories, it becomes a powerful way to rebuild collective identity using a shared visual language. Fashion is actually doing something culturally important there, signaling belonging, resilience.
Wow. Okay, so fashion as an active tool for community building. And it's not just in specific places, right? The sources mentioned the koirangs of Manipur, too.
Exactly. For the koirangs, their traditional textiles, their costumes, they're far more than just decorative. They're packed with meaning. They powerfully symbolize identity, social status, even the community's deep connection to nature. Often, oral traditions, stories, are literally woven into the designs. They're like living archives in fabric form.
Living archives, I like that. And it's not just traditional stuff, is it? The sources mentioned high-end fashion, too, like Gucci doing something different, maybe disruptive.
Yes, and what's intriguing there is how even contemporary luxury brands engage in similar, though maybe more subversive, semiotic acts. Gucci, for instance, with its sometimes grotesque or unexpected designs. It subverts those classic ideas of beauty. But semiotically, there's more going on. It deliberately draws attention to the materiality of the human body, often in its raw, maybe less perfect forms.
Why do that?
Well, it can be read as a kind of counterpoint, a reaction against the increasingly smooth, curated, almost immaterial feel of our digital lives. our online personas. It's almost like a defiant gesture back towards the physical, the corporeal, using the body itself as a sign against digital abstraction.
Huh. Like using clothes to comment on our digital versus physical selves. Interesting. Okay, so if clothes speak volumes, what about basics like food or even the places we live? Do they carry these kinds of hidden messages too?
Or absolutely. Our relationship with food and place is another incredibly powerful sign system, often working unnoticed. Think about the introduction of coffee back in 17th century Arabia. It profoundly changed how people experience spaces like mosques.
How did coffee change a mosque?
Well, traditionally, mosques were primarily for prayer, right? But coffee houses started popping up near them, or coffee became part of social interactions around them. Suddenly, these areas became hubs for social gathering, intellectual debate, even politics. They transformed from purely religious zones into these multifunctional community spaces. The act of sharing coffee itself became a sign of hospitality, of discussion, social bonding. It literally resigned the space, changing its meaning beyond just religion.
That's a fantastic example. A new thing, coffee, altering the whole meaning of a place. Or what about a city's nickname, like Bologna the Fat? The sources call that a semiotic artifact involved in complex negotiations. What does that mean?
Right, a nickname like Bologna the Fat, it's not just a catchy phrase. It functions as this really rich signifier, loaded with layers of meaning. It's a semiotic artifact because it embodies the city's identity, its history, its whole relationship with food. It's not just describing Bologna, it's performing.
Performing.
Yet it actively shapes how people relate to the city as a food destination, a place of abundance, maybe even a symbol of tradition versus modernity. It becomes this central point for conversations, debates, negotiations about the city's identity, its food heritage, even its present-day food scene for locals and tourists.
It's amazing how deep these meanings run. And what about something really simple like berry and mushroom picking in Finland? Sounds like just foraging, but the sources say it's packed with meaning too.
It absolutely is. It's described first as a foodway. It's
Yeah.
deeply linked to Finnish national identity and this concept of sisu.
Sisu.
Yeah, sisu. It's a Finnish term kind of embodying extraordinary determination, resilience, grit, especially when facing challenges. So foraging isn't just getting food. It's a practice that embodies and reinforces this core national characteristic. It's also seen as a pathway, meaning it helps define how people relate to Finland's huge forests, turning these vast, maybe anonymous woods into personally meaningful landscapes. And finally, it's even described as a playful practice, with the excitement of finding treasure, a bit of friendly competition. So the berries, the mushrooms themselves, they become signs not just of food, but of cultural values, national character, a whole relationship with nature.
It's really striking across all these examples, coffee changing social spaces, a nickname defining a city, foraging embodying national character. Material culture isn't just stuff we use, it's actively negotiating who we are personally and collectively. It's a really dynamic process.
Absolutely. And that understanding just gets deeper when we shift from the physical world to the digital and social landscapes that dominate so much of our lives now.
That's the perfect place to go next. We've seen semiotics in the physical world. But let's talk about the huge shifts happening online and in society. This feels like where semiotics really helps us grapple with contemporary life, maybe the confusing parts too.
Precisely. Kay O'Halloran's work, mentioned in the sources, on matter and meaning in the digital age, is really insightful here. She argues digital tech has profoundly restructured our whole semiotic landscape. She even uses this powerful metaphor, the digital age as a one-way mirror.
A one-way mirror. What does she mean by that?
It suggests that while we're looking into these digital platforms, social media, websites, whatever, they're simultaneously reflecting back and structuring our perception of reality. They subtly guide how we think, how we interact, through the signs they choose to show us or hide from us. It's like this invisible force shaping our mental world, constantly influencing our view of things.
Wow, a mirror that also shapes what it reflects. That's quite an image. And within that digital world, think about emojis, those little pictures we use constantly. The sources suggest they're the semiotic body of digital chat. What's a semiotic body?
Yeah, the semiotic body, it's a really useful way to think about them. See, in face-to-face conversation, our actual bodies, gestures, expressions, tone, they do so much heavy lifting, conveying meaning, right? Non-verbal cues.
Right, loads of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Online, in text, most of that is just gone. So emojis kind of step into that void. They become this condensed body language. They stand in for physical presence, often carrying the emotional weight or the overall tone of the message. A simple thumbs up can mean agreement or got it or even sarcasm, depending on the context. They add that crucial layer to flat text.
That makes total sense. You can definitely misread a text without an emoji sometimes. But this digital life isn't always easy. The sources talk about digital burnout. How does semiotics help explain that? Is it just too much screen time?
It's more than just screen time. It's about the constant semiotizing our brains are forced to do. That's the key insight. We're constantly bombarded with non-physical stimuli notifications, AI recommendations, targeted ads. Each one is a sign demanding interpretation. Our brains are working overtime trying to decode all these digital signals, often without the full sensory context we get from physical interaction. And that relentless, often unconscious meaning-making, it causes real cognitive stress.
So our minds are just overloaded trying to process signs in a way they didn't really evolve for.
Okay, going even bigger picture, the metaverse. It's described as an interactive field mixing virtual, augmented, and everyday reality. Experts are analyzing hybrid signs there. What are those? And how do they challenge our ideas about identity, maybe in games like Nier Automata?
Right, hybrid signs in these emerging spaces are fascinating. They're signs that kind of blend elements from both the physical and digital worlds. They operate across realities. Think of an avatar that represents a real person or maybe a virtual item that has actual real-world financial value. This creates this really complex semiotic soup where the lines between what's real and what's simulated, what's human and what's artificial get incredibly blurry.
Blurry is right. And in games like Nier Automata, you see concepts like man-made humanity. The game explores what it even means to be human if your existence is entirely digital or constructed. It uses visual cues, story structures, character designs, all these signs to semiotically poke at our traditional understanding of identity, consciousness, personhood. It really pushes the boundaries of what science can tell us about being.
That's mind-bending, how digital spaces are forcing us to rethink what it means to exist. Okay, shifting slightly away from the purely digital. Semiotics also helps analyze bigger societal narratives, especially resistance
Oh,
movements.
definitely. Take the anti-monument movement in Latin America, for example. The sources analyze this not just as destruction, but as a profound semiotic process. They talk about knocking down statues to weave new
Let's say
symbols of
that,
identity.
weaving new symbols.
Exactly. Those old statues, often colonial figures, were powerful signs of historical oppression, structural violence. So taking them down isn't just erasing history, it's actively deconstructing old narratives. And then replacing them with new signs, maybe murals, maybe different kinds of memorials that reflect current values, social justice, a reclaimed collective memory. It's a direct challenge to power, written in public space.
It's like public semiotic editing, rewriting the narrative. And we all saw something similar, linguistically at least, during the pandemic with all the war metaphors, right? Fighting a battle, the invisible enemy. The sources say these weren't just words, they actually shaped our perception and spread fear. How does semiotics show that?
Semiotics reveals that metaphors are more than just literary devices. They're powerful cognitive frames. They shape how we understand things. When the pandemic was framed as a war, words like enemy, frontline, battle became dominant signs. This automatically primed us, semiotically, to see the situation through a lens of conflict, urgency, maybe unit aggression. It could simplify complex health issues into a kind of binary struggle.
Us versus them.
Precisely. And that framing, whether intended or not, could amplify anxiety, maybe promote division, and even influence policy towards more martial approaches rather than purely public health ones. Language fundamentally shaped the collective experience.
And this use of framing extends the source's note to what's called the weaponization of migration narratives by political actors. When we hear weaponization, what does semiotics help us see about how those narratives are actually built and used?
Right. Weaponization here refers to how political actors might deliberately construct and deploy specific stories about migration. They use particular words, maybe charged terms like invasion or flood-specific images, and frame situations in certain ways. The goal isn't just to inform, but often to manipulate public opinion, generate fear, or create social conflict for political advantage. Semiotics lets us break these narratives down. We look at the signs, the word choices, the images used, who's cast as the victim, who's the villain. Analyzing these components reveals the underlying power strategies and how these stories are maneuvered to divide people.
Deconstructing the strategy behind the story. And it's not just politics. What's really interesting is that even something as seemingly chaotic as conspiracy theories, like the pandemic video the sources discuss, can apparently be analyzed using a common semiotic syntax. What does that even mean? A syntax for conspiracy?
It sounds counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But this idea of a semiotic syntax suggests that even though conspiracy theories might seem wild and disconnected, many actually follow a recognizable underlying structure. Researchers are finding patterns in how they link signs together. For instance, connecting unrelated events, identifying hidden or powerful agents behind the scenes, assuming secret motives. There's a kind of internal logic, a grammar to it.
A grammar of suspicion.
Sort of. By understanding this shared syntax, we can better see their underlying structure, maybe even predict how new theories might spread, or understand why these narratives, despite lacking evidence, can be so compelling for some people. They create their own internally consistent, though factually flawed, world of meaning.
So whether it's politics or conspiracy theories, semiotics gives us the tools to see how meaning gets built, used, and understood in these really complex, sometimes fraught social situations.
Absolutely. It helps us trace those invisible threads that shape our collective understanding.
Okay, so we've looked at the semiotics of the world around us, material things, digital spaces, social narratives. But what about us? What about our inner lives, our emotions, even our own bodies? How does semiotics help us understand ourselves?
This is where it gets really deep and personal, I think. One really interesting development mentioned is Eero existential semiotics. It's a newer approach that blends classical semiotics with continental philosophy. Thinkers like Heidegger. It explores concepts like Dasein, which is basically our unique way of being in the world, our conscious existence, and how individuals engage in world-making through the signs they use and interpret.
So it connects meaning making directly to our experience of existing.
Exactly. It suggests our very sense of self and reality is fundamentally shaped by signs. It's not just about analyzing the outside world. It's about understanding how meaning structures our internal lived experience. It gives us a more philosophical layer.
Okay, so not just interpreting the world, but how signs shape our place in it. The sources also have these beautiful examples of how emotions get translated across different art forms. Can you give us one, this idea of inner semiotic translation?
Yes, a great example is Chopin's Etude in E major, Opus 10, number 3. Apparently he composed it while feeling intense homesickness. So the music itself, the melody, the harmony becomes a powerful signifier of that specific, deep, nostalgic feeling. Then, this piece becomes what's called an intertextual reference. It inspires later popular songs that try to evoke that same nostalgic feel, but they do it not just with sound.
With words, too.
Right, with lyrics. And maybe even with music videos that use visuals, images, colors, editing to code similar feelings. That's intersemiotic translation. An emotion first expressed in music gets translated into and reinforced by signs in other systems, words, images. Yet that core feeling resonates across them all.
That's lovely. How an emotion can travel and deepen through different kinds of signs. And what about ancient myths? The sources mention the story of Psyche being transmuted across different arts.
Indeed. The Psyche myth, full of love, trials, transformation, is perfect for this kind of artistic reinterpretation or transmutation. In a painting, you lose the words of the myth, but you gain visual signs. Psyche's posture might convey suffering, color choices might signify passion or despair, symbols around her add layers of meaning. In a sculpture, the three-dimensional form, the texture of the stone, translates her emotional journey into something tactile. The verbal signs are gone, but the core sentiments, the allegories, they get translated into these visual or material languages. It shows art's incredible power to reinterpret meaning.
And even in something complex like opera, the sources mention a Wagner-inspired one, pretentious and Laodamia. Profound emotions like grief and desire are meticulously coded through stage design and the musical score.
Exactly. It's a multi-layered semiotic experience. The visual design sets, lighting, costumes, creates one set of signs. The musical score, melody, harmony, rhythm, instrumentation creates another. Together, they weave this complex tapestry of meaning, aiming to evoke very specific, often intense, body-centered feelings like longing or loss. It's an entire world built from coordinated signs.
It really comes back to the physical, doesn't it? Which leads us to the body itself. The sources quote Merleau-Ponty saying the body is a fundamental part of the life world, a grouping of lived-through meanings. And they introduce the term corposphere.
Yes, the corposphere. It's an evocative way to think about the body not just as a biological entity, but as this constant source of signification. Our bodies are always signifying something, even when still, even in their absence sometimes. They are, as Merleau-Ponty suggested, bundles of lived meaning.
So our bodies aren't just vessels, they're active communicators, like built-in sign systems.
Precisely. The body is arguably our primary site of semiotic expression. through gesture, posture, how we adorn ourselves, even the marks left by life experiences. It's like a living text, constantly expressing identity, emotion, social standing, cultural belonging. The way we carry ourselves, dress, maybe even the way illness manifests it, can all be read as signs within specific contexts. Our corpus sphere is always making meaning.
And the sources give a really stark example of this. The embodied memory of the blanket men, the Irish Republican prisoners. They turned their bodies into political signs.
Yes, this is a very powerful and frankly harrowing example. The blanket men protest involved refusing to wear prison uniforms. Instead, they covered themselves only with blankets. This act, rejecting the sign system of the uniform and replacing it with their own exposed, vulnerable bodies covered only by a blanket, was a deliberate, highly visible semiotic strategy. Their bodies became incredibly potent signs of resistance against what they saw as dehumanization and political criminalization. They essentially inscribed cultural memory and political defiance onto their own flesh. Their suffering became the message, a highly visible symbolic act using the body as the ultimate medium in that specific, intense historical context.
Wow, that really brings it home. This deep dive into semiotics in the life world, it just underscores that meaning isn't only in words. It's truly embedded everywhere. Gestures, objects, clicks online, stories, even our own bodies. It's this active, ongoing force shaping our reality from the most personal level to the biggest political stages.
It really encourages you, doesn't it, to see the world differently, not just as a collection of random things and events, but as this complex, constantly shifting web of signs. And we are all part of weaving and reweaving that web through our own semiotic labor, whether we realize it or not. We're creating the fabric of our shared existence constantly. It's about noticing that invisible architecture of meaning all around us.
So maybe the next time you scroll through memes or pick out an outfit or just walk down the street and notice some graffiti, take a second. Consider this. How are you participating in this endless process of world making through signs? And what new meanings are you adding to the life world just by being part of it?
Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other podcasts, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.